A night shift nurse broke hospital rules for one patient and fell in love. The neurosurgery ward at 2 in the morning is a purgatory of white walls and silence. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead. They cast a harsh, cold glow onto the polished linoleum floor. Every few seconds, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor echoes down the desolate hallway. It is a mechanical sound. It is entirely devoid of life. Nurse Harper Morris does not hear the beeps anymore. She moves from room to room like a programmed machine. Her steps are measured. Her face is a blank mask. She pushes a syringe into an intravenous port. She does not look into the patient's eyes. She does not offer a comforting smile. She simply checks the box on her digital tablet and walks away. "You are going to burn out, Harper. You treat them like broken engines instead of human beings. You have to show some warmth," Nurse Carla whispers as they cross paths at the central nursing station. Harper does not stop walking. She does not even turn her head. "Empathy does not save lives, Carla. It only destroys the ones left behind," Harper replies. Her voice is flat, empty. Harper pushes the heavy wooden door to room 412 open. Inside lies Rowan. He is curled onto his side. The room is perfectly quiet, yet both of his hands are pressed violently against his ears. He is trying to block out a sound that does not exist. He shakes his head and pushes the intravenous line away. He is actively refusing all medical intervention. Harper picks up his medical chart from the foot of the bed. The clinical notes are grim. A devastating traffic accident. Both of his legs were crushed between twisted metal. They are currently immobilized in heavy steel braces. He is confined to a wheelchair for the foreseeable future. But the true tragedy is hidden deep inside his skull. He suffered a severe temporal bone fracture. The violent impact caused internal bleeding. Now, inflammatory fluid is pooling and swelling. It is actively compressing his auditory nerve. He must remain in the hospital for 2 weeks. He needs to receive nightly intravenous corticosteroids to reduce the swelling. If the treatment fails, the nerve tissue will necrose. He will go permanently deaf. Harper looks up from the chart. Rowan is staring blankly at the white wall. His fingers are twitching against the sterile bedsheets. He is tapping out a frantic, silent rhythm. He is playing a complex piano melody that only he can hear. Harper steps closer to the bed. Her face remains impassive. "Hello, Rowan. How is your condition today? Can you still hear clearly?" she says. Her tone is polite, measured, and entirely clinical. Rowan stops tapping. He slowly turns his head on the pillow to look at her. His eyes are hollow. They are filled with a suffocating, unbearable grief. He lets out a dry, bitter laugh. It sounds like tearing paper. He raises a trembling finger and points directly at the vital signs monitor beside his bed. "I do not have the luxury of getting used to this noise. You look at that machine and you see a heartbeat. I look at it and I hear a metronome of my own ending. Every single one of those beeps is counting down the time I have left as a human being," Rowan says. His voice is raw. It cracks under the weight of his reality. He swallows hard, his chest heaving. The words strike Harper like a physical blow. "Counting down the time I have left as a human being." Suddenly, the sterile walls of the hospital vanish. Harper is pulled violently back into her own painful past. She smells the damp, rotting wood of the cheap apartment where her mother died. She remembers the agonizing poverty. She remembers the polite, cold rejections from hospital administrators because her family could not afford the medical bills. Harper had entered the medical field with a burning desire to save the vulnerable. She wanted to be a light in a dark system. But the harsh reality of the hospital had crushed her idealism. She watched poor patients get turned away. She watched people she cared for slip away into the dark. To survive the daily heartbreak, Harper had made a choice. She turned her heart into stone. She became a machine to avoid the agony of feeling. But looking at Rowan, the thick ice around her heart begins to fracture. Here is a young man whose entire reason for living is music. His passion is being ripped away by a cruel medical verdict. His soul is dying, just like hers did. If she walks away now, if she remains a cold machine, Rowan will fade into a living ghost. Harper grips the edge of the metal bed frame. Her knuckles turn stark white. She cannot let him become an empty shell. She will not let the silence consume him. The neurosurgery ward remains cloaked in shadows during the following nights. Nurse Harper Morris no longer walks the hallways like a programmed machine. A subtle but profound shift has occurred inside her mind. She enters room 412. She does not just bring the mandatory intravenous medication. She carries items hidden deep inside the pockets of her uniform. She took out her personal wired headphones, a white notebook, and a black pen. Hospital policy strictly prohibits unauthorized external electronic devices in the ward. Bringing them inside is a severe violation of medical protocol. Harper does not care. She approaches the hospital bed. Rowan Cade is lying awake. His eyes are fixed on the ceiling in silent agony. Harper leans over the metal bed rail. Her hands are trembling slightly. She plugged the earphones into her mobile phone, then gently placed them in his ears and pressed the play button. A symphony of classical music instantly floods into his ears. The reaction is immediate and visceral. Tears spill over Rowan's lower eyelids and trace down his pale cheeks. He suddenly reaches out and violently grabs Harper's wrist. His fingers dig deep into her skin. It is the desperate and frantic grip of a drowning man who has finally found a piece of driftwood in the open ocean. Harper freezes in place. Her breath catches in her throat. The frozen shield around her heart skips a beat. She does not pull her arm away. She stands quietly in the dim light and lets him hold on to her. Over the next few nights, Rowan used that little notebook and a music-making app on his phone. He begins to write a brand new musical composition. It is a frantic race against his own failing biology. He wants to finish one last masterpiece before he goes completely deaf. But the temporal bone fracture is unforgiving. The inflammatory swelling inside his skull increases. His residual hearing begins to fade into a distorted, muffled buzz. The beautiful melodies in his mind turn into chaotic noise. He hits a devastating creative wall. Absolute despair overtakes his fragile spirit. He rips the headphones off his head and throws them against the wall. He hurls the pen across the sterile room and pushes the notebook off his lap. It falls onto the polished linoleum floor with a dull thud. Harper stands near the doorway and watches the heartbreaking outburst. She walks over slowly. She bends down and picks up the fallen notebook. She looks at the chaotic and aggressive musical notes scribbled on the paper. "Are you writing about death? This melody sounds like you are completely giving up," Harper says. She looks directly into his defeated eyes. "Because my world is turning off. The silence is winning," Rowan replies. He drops his face heavily into his trembling hands. Harper steps closer to the edge of the bed. She reaches out and firmly grasps his right hand. She pulls his hand away from his face and places it flat against the hard cardboard cover of the notebook. She presses her own fingers over his knuckles. She begins to tap his hand against the book. Tap, tap, tap. It is a steady, undeniable rhythm. It perfectly matches the beating line on the vital signs monitor beside them. Your world is turning off, but you are still living. You have to add a heartbeat to this. You must write the rhythm of existence, Harper says. Her voice is soft but fiercely determined. Rowan slowly lifts his head from his chest. He looks at her in absolute shock. He cannot hear the tapping sound clearly, but he can feel the physical vibration of the rhythm traveling through his skin and bones. He stares at the woman standing beside him. He sees the intense fire burning behind her clinical mask. He slowly pulls the pen from her other hand. He looks down at the blank page and begins to write the music again, guided entirely by the steady rhythm of her touch. The hospital roof at 11 at night is a different world. The clinical smell of antiseptic is replaced by the crisp, cool scent of a city night. Above, the sky is a vast canvas of deep obsidian, dotted with thousands of shimmering stars. Harper is no longer wearing her sterile blue scrubs. She finished her shift an hour ago. Now, she wears a soft, oversized wool sweater and jeans. She looks less like a machine and more like a woman carrying a heavy secret. Earlier, she had walked past room 412 one last time. She did not stop. She did not speak. She simply leaned over and left a small, folded piece of paper on Rowan's bedside table. "The stars are beautiful tonight. 11 o'clock on the rooftop," the note had said. Rowan Cade arrives exactly on time. The elevator doors chime softly, and he rolls out onto the concrete terrace. He is maneuvering the heavy manual wheelchair by himself. His arms are strained, his breathing a bit heavy, but his eyes are alert. Harper is leaning against the metal railing, waiting for him. She smiles when she sees him. It is a real smile, slow and soft, reaching her eyes for the first time in years. This is their sanctuary. Here, the rules of the neurosurgery ward do not exist. Rowan rolls his chair up beside her. He pulls the crumpled notebook from his lap and rests it on the railing. The moonlight is bright enough for them to see the messy ink marks and the scribbled lyrics. Rowan begins to hum. His voice is raw and husky, a low vibration that carries through the quiet night air. He is testing the bridge of the song they started together. He stops, looking frustrated, his pen hovering over a sequence of low, melancholic notes. "This part is not working. It feels too heavy. It feels like the walls are closing in again," Rowan mutters. He rubs his temples, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he tries to hear the music through the fading filter of his hearing. "Do not use the low notes there. It reminds me too much of the cold rejections in the hospital lobby. It sounds like a door slamming shut. Reach for the high notes instead. Make it soar. Make it sound like a protest against the dark," Harper says. She leans over the wheelchair, pointing to the staff lines on the page. Rowan looks at her, then back at the paper. He scratches out the old notes. He writes new ones, higher and sharper. He hums the new melody. It is piercing and beautiful. It sounds like a bird trying to fly with a broken wing. Rowan works quickly now. He recorded a draft of the melody on his phone, then put the tracks together. The song is nearly finished. It is a haunting mix of his technical brilliance and her raw emotion. Rowan takes the headphones and places one side over his own ear. He holds the other side out toward Harper. She leans down, her hair brushing against his shoulder, and presses the ear cup to her head. The music plays. It is a soaring, defiant anthem. It captures the pain of the accident, the fear of the silence, and the strange, unexpected warmth of their late-night meetings. It is the best thing he has ever written. As the final note fades into the wind, Rowan does not look back at the notebook. He does not check the recording. He slowly turns his head to the side. Harper is still close. Her eyes are shimmering, reflecting the distant starlight. She looks at the city lights, her hand still resting near his on the armrest of the wheelchair. Rowan realizes in that moment that the most beautiful melody he has ever known is not in the headphones. It is not written in ink. It is the steady, quiet presence of the woman standing beside his wheelchair. She is the rhythm he was missing. She is the only sound he ever wants to remember. Harper turns to look at him, sensing his gaze. The air between them is thick with words they are both too afraid to say. The city hums far below them, but up here, in their private kingdom of stars and steel, the silence is finally peaceful. Daylight in the hospital is brutal. It strips away the romantic starlight of the rooftop and replaces it with the cold, sterile reality of white linoleum and the smell of industrial bleach. The hallway outside room 412 is a chaos of activity. Nurses rush past with clattering metal carts. Pagers beep incessantly. The impersonal overhead speakers summon doctors to distant wings. Inside the room, Harper Morris stands by the intravenous pole. She checks the bag of high-dose corticosteroids. It is nearly empty, but the medical charts tell a grim story. The swelling inside Rowan's skull is not receding. In fact, the inflammation is worsening, ruthlessly crushing the auditory nerve against the bone. Rowan sits upright in bed, his face pale and drawn. He is clutching the small music player like a lifeline. He pulls the headphones over his ears, desperate to hear the defiant anthem they finish together. He presses play, but music does not come out. Instead, a cacophony of distorted screeches and metallic static floods his head. The swelling has turned his masterpiece into a nightmare of discordant noise. Rowan winces in physical pain. He cranks the volume to the maximum setting, his hands shaking. The sound only becomes more jagged, more broken. It sounds like a radio station lost in a violent storm. The frustration boils over into a raw, primal explosion. Rowan rips the headphones off and flings them across the room. With a violent sweep of his arm, he sends the lunch tray crashing to the floor. Soup splashes against the wall, and his precious notebook slides into the mess. It is meaningless. The song is broken. I cannot even hear my own final work. Everything is gone, Harper. Everything, Rowan screams. He slams his eyes shut, his chest heaving with ragged sobs of pure helplessness. Harper moves toward him, her hands reaching out to stabilize him. Before she can speak, the heavy door swings open. Dr. Blake stands there, his arms crossed, his face a mask of professional disapproval. "Step outside, Nurse Morris." "Now," Dr. Blake commands. His voice is a low, dangerous warning that leaves no room for argument. Harper follows him into the busy hallway. Blake turns on her immediately, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. "You are crossing lines that were drawn for a reason. Your personal involvement is destabilizing the patient. You are an instrument of medicine, Harper, not a therapist. Back off before you cause permanent psychological damage." Before Harper can defend herself, a young woman rushes toward them. It is Maya, Rowan's younger sister. Her eyes are red from crying, and she looks exhausted. She stops in front of Harper, her hands trembling. "Please, just stop. My brother is losing his world, and you are giving him these illusions. You are making him think there is a way back when the doctors say there is not. You are being cruel, not kind. Stay away from him, Harper. I am forbidding you from entering his room unless it is for basic care," Maya cries out. Her voice is a mixture of grief and accusation. Harper stands frozen in the middle of the crowded corridor. The hospital staff moves around her like water around a stone. She can hear Rowan's muffled sobs through the heavy door. She looks at her hands, the same hands that held his while they wrote the music. The system is closing in. The rules are tightening like a noose. For the first time, Harper feels the crushing weight of the silence that is coming for them both. She knows the medical window is closing. She knows that if she follows these orders, Rowan will spend his last days of hearing in a state of absolute despair. The machine is telling her to stay back, but her soul is telling her to fight. Harper watches Maya walk into the room and close the door. The boundary is set. The warning is clear. But as Harper looks at the digital clock on the wall, she begins to calculate the risk. She has one last chance to save his spirit, even if it costs her everything. The hospital clock strikes 2 in the morning. Harper Morris stands alone in the harsh fluorescent glare of the break room, carefully flattening the crumpled sheet music on the plastic table. She had quietly rescued the paper from the floor after Maya closed the door, gently wiping away the spilled soup with a paper towel. To the hospital administration, this stained paper is just biological waste that needs to be discarded. But as Harper traces the chaotic, smeared ink, she knows it holds the very last fragments of Rowan's identity. If she simply follows Dr. Blake's strict orders, her career remains perfectly safe, and she can go home at the end of her shift. But tomorrow morning, Rowan will wake up in a world of absolute, irreversible silence. He will carry this unfinished, unheard melody inside his head for the rest of his life. Harper stares at her cold coffee, listening to the monotonous hum of the vending machine. The sterile smell of the room suddenly reminds her of the rundown apartment where her mother died, and the polite, clinical rejections they received from hospital administrators. She had spent years building a professional wall to survive the grief of this job, but she realizes she is slowly becoming part of the indifferent machine she used to hate. She reaches into her uniform pocket, her fingers brushing against her heavy security access badge. She does not need to smuggle a critical patient through a dangerous underground tunnel, but she is about to cross a professional line she can never uncross. Just down the corridor in the physical rehabilitation wing lies a specialized audiology testing room. It is equipped with a high-fidelity vibroacoustic soundboard designed for severe hearing loss. The room is strictly locked and off-limits until the morning therapy staff arrives, and accessing it without a physician's direct order is grounds for immediate termination. "He deserved one last moment that belonged to him," Harper whispers to the empty room. Her voice is no longer flat or clinical. It is grounded in a quiet, unwavering resolve. She steps out of the lounge and sends a quick, vague text message to Nurse Carla, asking her to cover the nursing station for 20 minutes. She walks quickly down the dim hallway and pushes the heavy wooden door to room 412 open. Rowan is lying awake in the dark, his red eyes fixed blankly on the ceiling in complete despair. Harper steps up to his bed, pulls the heavy hospital blankets over his immobilized legs, and firmly releases the metal brakes on his wheelchair. "We are going for a very short walk down the hall, Rowan," Harper says quietly, leaning down so he can read her lips in the shadows. "I need you to trust me, and I need you to be completely silent." Harper carefully helped him into the wheelchair, gently moving him and pulling the IV stand along with him. She pushes Rowan's wheelchair out of the room and rolls him smoothly down the quiet corridor toward the physical rehabilitation wing. She swipes her security badge at the restricted door, fully aware that the digital system will record her unauthorized entry. She wheels him into the specialized vibroacoustic testing room. She does not throw a deadbolt or lock them inside, but she pushes the heavy door firmly shut to block out the mechanical beeps of the hospital. The clinical space is instantly plunged into a deep, insulated quiet. She pulls his smartphone from her uniform pocket. It contains the rough audio mix they had layered together using a mobile composing application. She connects the device directly to the clinical soundboard, routing the audio into the specialized tactile transducers built into the testing chair. She carefully places the heavy diagnostic headphones over his ears and adjusts the low-frequency resonance. Harper takes a deep breath and presses the play button on the glowing screen. For the first time in days, the music reaches him in a form his failing body can actually recognize. The deep bass notes travel through the acoustic equipment, sending steady, rhythmic vibrations directly into his bones. Rowan gasps softly as the physical sensation of his own melody washes over him. He closes his eyes tightly, and hot tears immediately spill over his eyelashes, tracing down his pale cheeks. The room translates the lost sound into something much larger than hearing alone, anchoring him to the music he thought was gone forever. Harper stands quietly beside the control panel, watching the heavy tension finally leave his shoulders. She knows the hospital administration will discover this blatant breach of protocol by morning. But seeing the quiet, profound peace on his face makes the inevitable consequence feel entirely insignificant. As the final vibration fades into the padded walls, Rowan sits perfectly still in the quiet room. He slowly opens his eyes, his hands trembling slightly as he reaches out to grasp her hand. He holds onto her fingers with a gentle, grounding strength. "Thank you. I thought I was losing the last part of myself, but you gave it back to me for one night," Rowan whispers. His voice is ragged, filled with a profound and quiet gratitude. The morning sun blazes through the blinds of the hospital administrative office. The natural light is harsh and entirely unforgiving. Harper Morris sits perfectly still across from Dr. Blake and a human resources representative. A laptop screen displays the security camera footage from the previous night. It clearly shows Harper swiping her access badge at the restricted physical rehabilitation wing. She is wheeling a critical trauma patient into an unauthorized therapy room. Dr. Blake looks at her, his expression more tired than angry. "You bypassed medical protocol and used unapproved therapeutic equipment on a vulnerable patient. You crossed a dangerous professional line, Harper," he says quietly. Harper does not offer an excuse. She does not deliver a dramatic speech about saving a soul. She simply nods and accepts the formal disciplinary paperwork slid across the desk. She is suspended indefinitely, pending a full medical board review. To avoid a drawn-out investigation, she quietly resigns later that week. She packs her locker and walks out of the sliding glass doors for the last time. The brutal reality of the medical world does not allow for magical reversals. By the end of the week, the inflammatory fluid inside Rowan's skull causes irreversible damage. The medical treatment officially fails. Rowan wakes up in his hospital bed on a cloudy Thursday morning. He looks at the vital signs monitor beside him, watching the green line spike up and down on the digital screen. He cannot hear the steady, mechanical beeping. The silence, when it finally settles over his world, is not dramatic or chaotic, it is total. Rowan stares at the empty room, feeling the heavy weight of his new reality. Then, the heavy wooden door slowly pushes open. Harper walks into the room. She is no longer wearing her sterile blue nursing scrubs. She wears a simple, soft sweater, and her face is remarkably radiant despite the exhaustion in her eyes. She holds a small thermos of warm water in her gentle hands. She walks directly to his bedside, moving with the quiet, steady grace of someone who truly belongs there. She is no longer his assigned medical provider. She has chosen to stay by his side through these incredibly dark days, acting with the fierce and unconditional devotion of a family member. She gently places the warm thermos into his trembling hands. She sits on the very edge of his hospital bed and offers a soft, reassuring smile. His world is permanently quiet now, but the physical warmth radiating from the thermos and the quiet presence of the woman sitting beside him tells him he is not entirely alone in the dark. 2 full years have passed since that long night in the neurosurgery ward. The late afternoon sun pours through the windows of a small, cluttered apartment. The golden light bathes the living room in a warm and peaceful glow. A worn wooden piano sits proudly beside the glass door. The song they finished together never became a massive global phenomenon. It was quietly uploaded to an independent music forum, where it found a small, deeply dedicated community of listeners. Rowan Cade is permanently deaf. He relies heavily on a sturdy metal cane to walk, and the dull ache in his healing legs is a daily reality. But he absolutely refused to abandon his piano. He learned an entirely new way to compose his music. He presses his palms flat against the wooden piano, feeling the deep physical vibrations of the heavy chords. He uses visual composing software to map out the melodies his body can still feel. Harper also found a different path after losing her acute care career. She now works a modest patient support role at a local community clinic. She spends her days helping vulnerable people navigate the complicated medical system, finding the exact warmth she used to hide. The front door of the apartment unlocks with a soft click. Harper walks into the quiet living room after a long, exhausting shift. Rowan is sitting on the piano bench with his back facing the entrance. He does not hear the heavy door close. He does not hear her soft footsteps on the hardwood floor. His hands are moving steadily across the black and white keys. Harper walks up behind him and gently rests her hand on his right shoulder. Rowan startles slightly, but his tense shoulders instantly relax as he recognizes her familiar touch. He turns around and pulls her down to sit beside him on the narrow bench. He looks at her face, tracing the tired lines around her eyes with a gentle smile. "I still miss sound every single day," Rowan says. His voice is deep and carefully measured as he watches her eyes. I just do not feel alone in the silence anymore. Harper smiles, leaning her head comfortably against his broad shoulder. They sit together in the quiet room, letting the fading sunlight wash over them. Some losses do not get reversed. They simply become easier to carry when someone chooses to stay. Some losses do not get reversed. They simply become easier to carry when someone chooses to stay. Thank you for watching this journey. If Harper and Rowan found a place in your heart today, please leave a comment below. Tell me what part of their story you felt the most. Do not let the silence win. Subscribe to the Soul Stirring Stories channel and hit the notification bell. We bring you grounded, emotional tales every single week. Your support helps us share more moments of quiet resilience. Until next time, keep writing your own beautiful melody.